Sometimes the hardest mission is when you have to adapt to a new role. From starting a first responder career to a new assignment to retirement, Greg Furnia is here to help. Greg is a retired special operations supervisor and a personal and professional development coach. He helps first responders and their families navigate transitions and challenges with purpose and clarity. Learn more at livingthegoodlifecoach.com. That's livingthegoodlifecoach.com. Law enforcement and government agencies struggle with parking citations, often because no one will pay them. Boots or other devices are costly, and they invite confrontation when implied and later removed by enforcing employees. With Tire Tag, you can avoid many hurdles and ultimately promote public safety and revenue collection. To learn more, visit tiretag.com. For a thorough conversation on how Tire Tag can help your agency and revenue collection, visit episode 204. That's 204. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, everybody, welcome back. We frequently talk about culture, we talk about wellness, and that's really where Blue Grit Wellness started before Blue Grit Radio. And one thing that I didn't expect, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, is the pillar of identity. It's this job, this career, being a first responder, being a caretaker in the community. It becomes so much of it because it is so much more than just a job. However, it becomes really challenging when we consider transition points, when we consider career changes, family changes that affect our career, and then ultimately the one day thing that we should all be looking forward to, but truly we get pretty terrified, is the idea of hanging it up, retirement. And sometimes those retirements come a lot earlier than expected and very much jarring when that's not in the plan and that's not something we plan for, we conceptualize. And so with all that, I'm very excited to bring in my guest, Greg Furnia. We're going to talk about his law enforcement career, his work in and around special forces operators, helping them navigate their careers, all the ins and outs of his supervisory roles and different hats he's worn. But before I keep going, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's a pleasure. And I thank you for having me, Eric. We've been talking for a while, trying to get this taken care of and scheduled, and I'm glad it's finally here. So I appreciate the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's such a thing. And ever since I started, it kind of popped up in different ways, different questions, whether it was on social media, whether it be emails, the writing I've done with Police One, or whatever the thing is, questions kept coming up about how do you manage, work-life quote unquote balance, right? And a lot of people come on the show to say that doesn't exist. I like to think it's like a rebalance or like a work-life management, or I mean, it might be an illusion, but we got to keep kind of juggling those balls and setting them down and kind of reorienting. But all to say that these things are all intertwined with how do we show up at work? How do we show up at home? And then ultimately, what's it like when I change my position? What's it like when I'm working a desk now? What's it like when I promote? And then, do I or can I keep doing this job the same way I've been doing it? Is it serving me? Is it serving my almost like your internal dialogue of like what you are, like what you're here to do? And that's all this concept and conversation around identity.
Yeah, I think, well, everyone's an individual, right? We all are our own individual. We all have our own identity, and I think back many years ago,
A few years, maybe.
a few years, who was Greg?
Mm-hmm.
What was my identity prior to going into law enforcement? And I think we lose that in a sense quickly when we raise the hand, and we go into the academy. Maybe we don't lose it, but we certainly don't keep it in the forefront of our minds
Yeah.
when we're in the academy, right? You're in this transition, you're
Hmm.
thrown into this, you're super excited, you're scared, you have all these emotions, you have all these things going on, and you start taking on a little bit of a new identity as to that transition and where you're going. And I am a firm believer in some of the things that I want to get back out there in this proactive approach is you can keep your identity all the way through from day one to the end. It's just building it, right?
Hmm.
It's building it and forming it to how that works for you, your values, your family settings, where you are, where you're living. I don't believe you have to lose that identity in order to be successful in both your professional and personal lives.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think not only that, I think you need to have a keen sense of that. And so when you're talking about going in an academy and knowing who Greg was, and I think about it too, like who was Eric? And I know now, but in the time, I if I could do anything differently, it would have been periodic inventory of like who am I? What am I about? And like writing it down, because in the hard times and the stressful times and the times where you're like, is this job worth it? Or man, like the public hates me, or man, I feel like nothing's changing and I'm going to all these calls. I'm just in this vicious revolving door. You look back to your purpose, you look back to your values. And if you actually write them down or you put them in a Google Doc or in a journal, like it should take you back to where you are, like why you came in. It should resolve your conviction. And so I've made that recommendation so many times now, is that wherever you're at, like put that down, set a reminder on your phone. Maybe it's every 6 months, maybe it's every new year, maybe it's monthly. I'm more like monthly. Like let's revisit these things and make sure that we're living upright the direction we want to go. Because yeah, you're right. Like, and I think that the academy was designed in for good reasons. Like the intent was there to
Hmm.
build this persona, to shield yourself, right? To build yourself up in this confidence that you had to train, but you needed to be the biggest, baddest, force out there, because you're going to be dealing with the biggest, baddest badness out there. And so like that persona might be a harsh word, but kind of smothering to who, young Greg was or who young Eric was back then.
Yeah, I'll go back just a little bit. One of the points that you made that resonates with me is writing this stuff down and reminding yourself of who you are. Man, I got to be honest with you. When I went into the academy, I don't think I ever really stopped to think about that. I
Hmm.
never really stopped. Hindsight, I can look back and write a book about all the steps that made me who I am today. But realistically, I don't really think that, or at least it wasn't brought to me at that time. Certainly not at the academy level of, hey, this is who you are. These are the special qualities that you have that can really excel in this law enforcement life. These are the qualities that we're going to use and really pull out of you that are going to make you this type of an agent or this type of an officer. These programs are going to you're going to fit into the best. You're going to really excel in your career and it's going to follow your values. That stuff really wasn't talked about. And once again, I'll go back. I'll speak for myself. I never wrote that stuff down. I never
Yeah,
even thought about doing stuff like that, and probably
me
till
either.
middle of my career, maybe when the leadership piece started coming into phase, where I started having to understand, all right, what's your purpose? Where is your direction? Forward thinking. I'm not just thinking of tomorrow. I'm thinking of a year, 3 years, 5 years down the road. When you put it in that perspective. But it is a crucial point, I believe, in getting to our recruits and our and the field training officers, and to get these individuals to understand really, okay, who were you before raising your hand for the oath, and then where do you want to go? Because we get so overwhelmed when you get into that academy setting, and then all of a sudden you start. I don't know. I know in certain times in my career, I looked up to other individuals like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that, and then you get into this competition, right? Our personalities were very competitive, and then you start, and then you're like, why am I, this really doesn't fit me, but it seems like everybody else is doing this way. Yeah. So I think the foundation is really finding out really who you are, what is your identity, and set your purpose early.
Hmm.
And I think I'm very big in family first mindset. And what I mean by that is the people that you circle, that inner circle that you build throughout your life. And so you said you would write it down. I would I would throw that out there in some of in some of my trainings is, who do you have that you can talk to about this? Who do you have
Yeah.
that you can write this down with to compare and say, hey, in 6 months, come back to me
Mm.
and let's talk about this. Let's have a little break check to see where I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to add to that point, I think that's very important.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we're gonna bounce around, and I'm gonna try to build off that while bringing in something you said earlier, which is I think you said, did you say conform or did I write it down?
You might have I may have said it.
Maybe I wrote it down, but it was like that academy, like, hey, you need to be like this, and you need to
Yeah.
do this, and I think that that is the traditional mindset of policing. And again, not disparaging it. There's a lot of good reasons, but when we conform, we are removing who we are. Like we look for like the best, the most courageous, the most self-defined, but serving of others type of people, right? Like selfless,
Hmm.
and yet we traditionally will ask you to be like this, fit in the box, do this way, say this that way, rather than thinking about how do we integrate concepts, lessons, all of these techniques and tactics to help you adapt and evolve who you were to make you your better you that can do this job and safely um and altruistically, but then like evolve rather than conform, right? And so I've been playing with this idea like conform versus perform, and we don't want automatons, my goodness, or robots. And
Robots, yeah.
so yeah, I like the journal or the writing down could be like a self check. I love how you bring in this family first, right? We all need people. You don't get into the business without being a people person. So I hate that old school like, oh, I became a cop, so I didn't have to deal with people. Like that's absolutely 100% like wrong. It's backwards. And I know it's a usually a sarcastic thing said, but hopefully people don't try to find some truth in that. But it
Right.
is like you need people. It might be your family unit, it might be your parents, it might be your best friend, your comrades, right? Like the people that knew you before to do that buddy check, right? That family check. And so
Absolutely.
what a fantastic spin on that, because we talk about how iron sharpens iron. A lot of people recognize the power of a coach or a mentor. You do that, we'll get into that too. But
Yep.
also, there are these people that truly, truly deeply care about you, and they know you to your core. They know you sometimes better than you know yourself. They know your best traits better than yourself. Like they'll
Mhm.
call them out. And so what if it became like, hey, we are this team of like this relationship or this family. And so we do these check-ins, and just like a boss, just like a great mentor, we're going to revisit our goals. We're going to revisit our values like periodically. Like what a fantastic way to maybe even start like a probably doesn't sound like super exciting, but like a date night, right? And that kind of thing where you're revisiting like what are our individual goals? What are our couple goals? What are our family goals?
Yeah. Man, you just segued into a really great point that I wanted to bring in, which is one of the foundations of everything I believe in, which is communication. And you mentioned a date night or a spouse, and like we said, that family first doesn't have to share the last name, right? It could be anybody, but the communication piece is so important. And I think it's such an integral part at the foundation of entering into first responder life is, get that piece, get that foundation set before we start creating the scars, before the scar tissue takes place. And then we start, you don't understand, honey, I can't explain this to you, or
Mm,
whatever, or you don't feel comfortable. You have those conversations of going back to setting those goals or who you really are. It doesn't have to be a long, it's sappy conversation. It could just be, hey, this is, this, or mom or dad or mentor or whoever it may be.
yeah.
These are my goals. This is why I started to go into the force, or a nurse, or whatever it may be. you know those individuals, when you go to sit and have that conversation 6 months from now, they're gonna come out and say to you, this is what you said to me, where are you right now? Or maybe they ask you, where are you right now, and then they come back with, huh, all right, this is where we pump the brakes. Is this where you want to go? Because 6 months ago, this is what you said. But that communication factor is why I'm still married 29 years later.
Congrats.
And thank you. That's just, I'm not bragging, but that is not something that is common within our world, right?
Yeah.
Within what we do. And I will tell you, communication is probably one of the top two in how not only the marriage. I don't want to get off into another topic, but it's just communication is the foundation. And whether it's with your management, with your peers, your mentors, whatever it may be, we have to continue communicating, and that is so important.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that, and not to take too much of a tangent either, but I was recently at I always dabble about going back to school or not, right? Getting a master's, and I was asked yesterday, like, what would you study? And I'm like, well, what I nerd out on is like organizational leadership, and like that's the stuff I talk about on here all the time, which I read about, but probably that or communication, because to me that is usually the breakdown in what we say is like bad leadership. A lot of times it's not the intent, it's just how it was received. And we all know communication, verbal, nonverbal, integrate EQ, like that's the make or break of any relationship, professional or personal. And congrats on your long marriage. I'm sure there's lots of stints where your communication was not great, just like me, just like it'll continue to be,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
never achieved. It's never like, oh, I won, I beat the final boss. No, it's like it's always a work in progress. And
yeah,
so I love that. And I love that younger individuals are so much more aware generationally, but also we're talking about it actively. Like we're training on it actively so that we can be more effective ultimately. Like we can be more effective people outside of ourselves in all of our teams, whether that's the family team or the work crew team. Yeah, I
yeah.
love that you brought up that point, Greg. So I do want to take a time because we kind of just jumped into it, which I love, but I do want to allow you to share a little bit about your personal and professional background. So if you could give us a little bit of a crash course there, so the listeners know about your hands-on resume and why you know so much about this, why you care so much about this.
Yeah. I started out. I grew up in a small town. Every one of those towns, everybody knows your business, right? It's just. But what I loved about that small town was it gave you that family feeling. Whether it was the small school, the businesses, so on and so forth. Everybody, you knew everybody, which was good. But you had the points where, yeah, like you said, small town, everybody knows your
A
business.
little bit nosy, right? Like everyone's
Yeah,
business.
right. I grew up in a family that eating dinner at the table with my brothers and sisters, mom and dad, was a foundation, right? It was
Mm.
that was a piece to. I think that's part of me, and that's why I'm bringing this up. It's what shaped me, and that's the communication piece as well. As we sat down every night for dinner, um, you know, and whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, it was good family conversation, right? And that's important to me, and I've maintained that throughout my career, still to this day. We still do this. My wife and I joined the Border Patrol, spent a little over 25, almost 26 years in the United States Border Patrol. Early on in my career, I was over in Wilcox, Arizona. Started out on the southern border. Some of the programs that were integral in shaping me were the horse patrol. I spent a year patrolling the border on a
Oh
horse,
wow,
on
that's
horseback.
cool.
Probably some of the longest, hardest days I've ever worked. 14, 16, 18-hour days. But I had a couple mentors that were, we'll just say, long in the tooth, that taught me a lot of really important things. And one of those was, you're going to work hard, but if there's something that you need to take care of with your family, that takes precedent. And
Wow, that's amazing.
that was important to me.
Do you feel like that was rare back then? Like that's not something that some people really, or I'll say it this way. These days people recognize the importance, and some bosses say it, but they don't really show it or demonstrate that they want their people to do it, right? They don't prove to their people to do it. So people, they say they hear it and yet they're not sure.
Yeah, I think that was rare at that time. I say rare, either I was extremely fortunate to be in a couple of the programs and meet these individuals at the right time that really instilled that, or maybe there was more out there than what I realized. And I'm not giving due credit, but I do know that there were others out there, that leadership and management that I did have, that did not place that family first, right? It was, you're going to be here at work. And and not to go on a tangent, but I will say, I got to admit, I think those individuals and those leaders, they were just hard charging. That was their lifestyle. That was what they did. They never missed work. They had every single sick hour on the books. They had every vacation hour on the books. They never used their use or lose. But there's nothing wrong with that if that's what that individual wants. But this goes into a leadership piece, which I'm sure, we
Yeah.
could get into down the road. But that's just a leadership style. And I honestly believe that's one of those things that I put in my toolbox as to when I became a leader. I wanted to be able to lead and letting everyone know that, working hard and maintaining a family or whatever you consider that family, that it's possible. You could do both. And as a leader, you can allow that to happen. You don't have to be that hard nosed. You can't do this, this, and this. Matter of fact, I think that's not conducive to a good work environment. But anyways, back to, my career with the Horse Patrol for that year. Amazing career with the Horse Patrol. It's a 1-year detail, collateral detail. Learned a tremendous amount. I came off of that, and then I ended up going in shortly thereafter, going into the Border Patrol Canine program.
Yeah, can I
And
ask real quick? So
yeah,
horse patrol's intriguing. There's a lot of newer folks that listen in. They're trying to figure out, oh, like what hat should I wear? What agencies should I look at because of opportunities? Can you tell me more about the horse patrol? What got you into that? And then it also kind of throws me off that it's 1 year. It feels like that'd be a very specialized thing. And unless you just grew up riding horses, but I feel like there's someone. I'm sure it's not just like riding horses.
um, what pulled me to it was, first of all, I knew the individuals that ran it.
Hmm. Yeah.
In our particular station, it was actually it was kind of a pilot. Only San Diego sector had a horse patrol, and Tucson sector was getting ready to implement the horse patrol.
Hmm.
So they were gearing up for their own academy, so on and so forth. I loved animals. I always had dogs all my life. I did ride some horses, but I thought the idea of patrolling the border on horseback and tracking down, you know, illegal activity and the drugs and all of that stuff, that just really excited me. And so I jumped into that. And yeah, you're right. It was very specialized. The training was intense. Let me tell you, I don't ever want to ride bareback for 40 hours again. That was part of it, to
Oh
find your
no,
seat. That's not even part of the academy anymore.
this sounds like hazing.
Oh,
To
there
be
was.
frank.
I have some stories. I'm not going to put it out there because they're funny stories. But man, my wife got me through that. I was in some rough shape. Anyways,
Times have changed.
yeah, exactly. It was, and you're right. It was very specialized, but that's the way things worked. Everyone had to have the opportunity. So it was a
Hmm.
1-year collateral detail, and once you were done with it, you could try to put back in for it, but it was just a rotating detail. I do know some of
Okay.
the sectors now. I think that's changed. I think now it can become a permanent collateral duty where that's. But at that time, it was not.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Jumped into the canine program, and their motto and the individuals that were running that program at that time was family first. And the leaders there that I had, the mentors, it didn't matter what you were doing. That was in El Paso, Texas at the time, for the trainings, but it didn't matter what you were doing. They demanded long, hard work days, training days. I mean, everything that we did. But if something came up in the family life, you dropped it, and they demanded. I mean, they literally demanded, you go now. We will find you a seat for the next class or
Mm,
whatever it may be. And that's still the program. The individuals
nice.
I know that are still running that still run that program the same way. But that really is what formed me throughout my career, and really how I continued throughout my career. I went into a handler, a bunch of different disciplines. I ended up going into our special operations canine program, was a coordinator over in up north in Swanton sector. And ultimately, I made it up to the assistant chief ranking, and was the program manager for the entire Border Patrol in the
Mm,
canine program. So,
wow. Dreaded admin,
yeah,
which has its own stress struggles.
absolutely. Learned a lot of leadership. I had a lot of great mentors. Listen, the Border Patrol was an amazing career. I would never give it up. It provided amazing things for my family. Not saying that it didn't have its ups and downs and its challenges
Sure.
without, Yeah, but that in a nutshell, I finished my career off at the Advanced Training Center in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. I was a supervisory leadership training officer, a course developer. So basically, I developed, helped supervisory training for up and coming leaders for all the
Oh,
CBP, and that's where I
nice.
finished. Then I came, then I retired.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you for that crash course. And you said a couple nuggets in there that are really significant. One is that, you were drawn towards this unit because you knew people, right? And so that's like, that is underlining the positive side of people follow leaders, right? Like that's what makes you a leader. People follow you. Being a boss doesn't make you a leader. Being a manager or supervisor doesn't make you a leader. But the fact that people want to follow you,
Yeah.
that's the stuff, right? People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. And I think that's a underlying theme that a lot of people recognize. Like they feel that they've wanted to quit maybe their not their job so many times. Sometimes it is an agency, but
Mhm.
a lot of times it's as simple as I'm going to this shift or I'm going to these days or I'm going to this side or I'm putting in for this unit. Don't really want to go to that unit per se, but you know what? I'll learn some things. There's some cool people. If I can get in, I can get out of here. Which
Yep.
is not a great thing to be motivated by, pain avoidance, but it's a real thing. That's human nature.
Absolutely. I look back, I don't believe I recognized this at the time, but early in my career, what I was doing was I was the individuals that I wanted to work with or work for shared my values. They shared my principles. They shared the
Mm,
same purpose. They mirrored how I envisioned, I guess, working and being able to still take care of the family and do the things that I wanted to do. I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't realize, I think, what drew me towards that. But you make a really great point as to you quit, what was the, would you quit the
you quit your
job, you quit the boss, not the job. And the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now is, man, I would love to be able to be in a room with whoever will take this information as a resource and to bring it in with all the other resources in the room and have individuals listen and say, I really hope you don't end up getting into a position where you have to quit the boss, right?
yeah,
Because I honestly believe some of those things are avoidable in your career if you just plan and understand your purpose and where you want to go instead of driving this car with a blindfold on, right? Or whatever you
yeah,
may do.
hmm,
There are ways to avoid that. And if you understand who you are and where you want to go and how you want to excel and keeping the family and all of that intact, I think those are avoidable. I honestly really do. I think you can do your best. I don't think it's 100% avoidable, but I think
hmm,
you can do your best to put yourself in a winning situation or
yeah.
situations that are better, that fit you.
I 100% agree. And I think that as a younger man, I would, depending on where I was at in my career, I would either say, that sounds really fluffy, or I would say, cool. I want to be with you, Greg. I'd like to think that. I'll try to believe it and be optimistic, but I don't know what it's grounded on. At this stage in my life and career, I think it's so much of what we've already talked about. Yes, you need to know your foundation. You need to make sure you have a steady foundation before you build and pile all these things atop of it. And it could be public scrutiny. It could also just be just a boss that you just don't like. But
Yeah.
neither of these things should be able to rock you to your core and make you question why you're doing this thing that you so badly knew and know you want to do. And so that is, I think, a huge piece that a lot of people hopefully reflect in. If you were in policing pre 2020 and you are still here, then you know that you had to dive deep to find that stuff.
Yeah.
You had to, connect with your colleagues, with your family, do that gut check, do that soul check to be like, what am I doing this for? Yeah, I did sign up for hard. Yeah, I knew it wouldn't be easy. And that's, worthy things often aren't. And so I think it does go specifically to identity. Not to talk too much more about it right now, but I mean, a lot of the training that I do for wellness, it has become mostly about mindset and
Mm.
identity, right? It's like, what are your values? Where are you starting? Because everything's built upon that, right? And
Yeah.
so I love how you've laid us a strong foundation, I mean literally but figuratively, on what people should think about so that when the hard comes, when the difficult leadership or the difficult stress comes, like you have your family foundation, right? You have your sense of self, your identity to navigate these transition points. Because again, the transition point could be like the job has changed, like your job description, or the job has changed because you feel like, everyone wants to abolish you as a profession,
Exactly. And those are things you don't have control over,
right?
right? I mean, there are so many variables that get thrown at us in our careers of where, listen, I just don't have control over that. So, but how am I going to be able to move forward? And, what is the transition going to be? How do I respond to that? How do I act to that? I'm not saying I have all those answers, but what I am saying is if you can build at the foundation an inner circle, if you can understand the individuals that you let into that trust, and they share those same values and same principles, you have probably the best team or tribe, I would say, learning from the Honor Foundation.
Mm,
You have that group of individuals that will get you through whatever it may be, whatever it may be. And if that transition, I know the leaders don't want to hear this out there, if that transition is, this is not for me anymore, then maybe that's the transition. Maybe that's the hard. I can't tell you how many officers and agents I've heard out there in their careers 15 years in and say, "Oh, I'm in it too far now. I can't
mm,
back out, or I can't go
yeah,
anywhere."
that's
It crushes me to hear that, because you're going to, are you really going to spend 10 more years of your life in a career that no longer satisfies or can give you what you intended it to give you when you first started, or what you've built? I hear that, and I'm like, man, that just crushes me to think that people would just quit on themselves like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like life's too short. There's this stoic saying, it's amor fati, which is like Latin for love your fate. And you love the good with the bad. And that might sound fluffy, but it's like, no, like you can't have the good without the bad. But
Absolutely.
when you're at that point, if you're 15 years in, 20 years in, you're like, man, I got the golden handcuffs. It's just too, I can't imagine doing anything with this much money, or I can't imagine like what the cut to pension would be. Like, don't choose misery. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and there's also this other competing narrative again with identity where I've heard people dabble about whether they should continue on, like it's not serving them, they're not well,
Hmm.
or they're challenged with this idea of it might even be staying in the job, but like maybe they're getting the nudge to get promoted. Maybe the bosses are asking them and saying, "Hey, I know you're not ready per se. You don't feel ready, but you are, and we need you." Maybe
Hmm.
their peers and those below them, and maybe their sergeant and their folks are saying, "Hey, please test. I want you to be at the next level, like leading. You're going to lead us the direction we need to go. I'm kind of worried about this guy or gal over there." And so it is a pretty frequent conversation I've had with people from all over, which is that, man, I think that I do the most good where I'm at, and I don't know, but I also would say you don't know, except whatever you say and believe, that will be true, right? If you think,
Yes.
hey, as a sergeant, I'm going to do the most good for my agency, I'm going to keep my guys safe, I'm going to say what needs to be said, that is where I'm going to make the most impact, then I would submit that you are correct. But if you say, I'm going to promote because we need that, we need my energy and my prerogatives and vision to be amongst that next room in, that's where I'm going to do the most good, then if you believe it, you'll be it. Like that's the thing. So I I love what you're offering, because to me it is being aware of what your vision, your narrative is, because you need to accept that you might be allowing these other narratives like, oh, I can't leave, I can't pick another career now, or I won't be doing any good. Come on, man. There's like people of all different kinds of careers and vocations that are doing so much good for the world. Like we are one small piece of it. We're a piece that's very necessary in policing,
Yeah.
but it's not the end all be all. You can't have a society of police officers. Like that doesn't work. That's not the thing.
You got that right. Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. And to stop and be, and no longer make progress, to just be sedentary in your career. I'm a big, and hey, listen, I've probably in a couple times in my career found myself there. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
just going to be this, and I'm just going to continue on to the realization, until someone comes along and gives you the old chain pop and says, "Okay, wake up. you got to be making progress. You got to move forward. There's got to be it doesn't have to be major steps every day, but moving forward in some sense every day is progress, and that includes your career and your, personally and professionally. You have to maintain that. Listen, man, we all know the statistics. When we retire, we the average is not good for us for lifespan, right? It's unfortunately just, so make the best of every day, both personally and professionally, and just, and utilize your resources, the people that surround you, the tools in your toolbox, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. You always have something to learn from something every day.
Yeah, I love that. Stay curious, like be a perpetual learner, which I think is such a tenet of being a solid leader, being a solid human being, right? Like
Yeah.
you're never gonna know it all, so don't act like you do or you will. The chain pop, is that a canine reference? Like
Oh
it's a
yeah.
little
That's
leash correction? Yeah.
a
A
little
little
leash correction. Yep.
yeah, for those that aren't canine, they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." Yeah, a little pop like, "Hey, a little correction." That's
Yep.
all.
Just
Um
grab your attention. Yep.
I want to talk about where this intersects with leadership, because you literally built curriculum and trained leaders, and that's such a huge. I don't even know if theme captures it for this show and the content and the purpose of this project, because we're all leaders. People newer to the show or younger, I think I might have thought that too. Like I know I'm a worker bee. I'm a drone. It's like no, we're all leaders. You got to start with leading yourself. You lead your life. You curate it the way
Mhm.
you don't just accept what happens to you. You happen to your life. So let's talk about that. I want to hear your thoughts, some leadership nuggets, some major tenets that if you could scream it from the mountaintops of what people need to hear.
Yeah. On the leadership aspect, I just, over my time in the patrol, I had some amazing leaders, and then I had some leaders that I let's just say I didn't align with
Sure.
that way.
You're so
I
polite,
had
Greg.
What's that?
You're so polite. You're so restrained. I love it. What a
Well,
professional.
I just, at the end of the day, I try to keep an open mind, especially in my life right now. Try to keep an open
Hmm.
mind that everybody's got something going on, no
Yes.
matter what,
Hmm.
right? And we just happen to be in a place in other people's lives at certain times, and you don't know what's going on in the background, right? So I always try to give a little bit of doubt. But, in the leadership piece, the biggest tidbit that I would throw out there is from day one, my mentors told me every day you're learning something, kind of what we just referred to. You got the
Hmm.
proverbial toolbox, right? And, whatever drawer you want to put in what you learn each day. But what I took was just as much as from the leaders that I didn't align with, or I just thought were plain terrible leaders. I still was able to take those pieces of their leadership values, skill sets, whatever you want to call it, whether they're desirable or not desirable. And I placed those in that toolbox. And throughout the years, tried to build who I was going to be as a leader based upon all the experiences that I had throughout my career. And really trying to understand why those weren't valuable and why they were valuable.
Mm.
And man, listen, I disagreed with a lot of leaders out there and then realized years down the road, wow, they actually had their stuff in order, and I
Yep.
was way wrong
Same.
about that. You
Just
know,
awareness, right?
it's total awareness. And it's also about, I go back to that inner circle in that group and having other people put you in check. You have those conversations. We have those conversations as agents and officers and supervisors or whatever, and you'll sit in the coffee room, whatever, you're on break, you're, having a drink after work, whatever it may be. Sometimes those individuals aren't the ones that are providing you with the best advice because you work with them every day. You all share the same opinions. You all have the same, thought process. Sometimes you need somebody from an outside perspective that's going to lay it out hard for you and maybe ask you a difficult question of, what is it that bugs you about them? And then you answer that question, and that individual that doesn't work with this person brings out a perspective of something that never ever you never even thought about. And you have to sit and resonate on it. You sit and think about that a little bit and say, man, I never thought about it and looking at it in that way. So, you know, what I've learned throughout and then assisting in building these programs and being working with the up and coming supervisors with CPP was you got to keep an open mind, but really, you really need to invest in the people that you manage. And you really need to understand who's working for you in an individual way, because every single one of those individuals that work for you or with you have their own unique talents and strengths that will
Hmm.
bring your team to being the strongest team that you can have. You just as the manager have to figure out how to mold all of those talents, all of those strengths, even their weaknesses, and figure out, okay, how do I avoid this, right? How do I
Yeah.
keep them
Hmm.
out of these situations? And then you can build that team that's high performing, but yet can still have a good quality personal life. So
Yeah.
in a nutshell, that's kind of what I would bring to the table in a leadership perspective. I think you can have hardworking folks that'll work with you and for you, and they can still enjoy their lives, and you can still have a high performing team.
Yeah, absolutely, and probably the best performing team when you regard people as humans. Like you even said it, right? Like, hey, I had some bosses I wasn't aligned with, and there is so much grace extended there. And absolutely true. I can think of a lot of bosses where, as an officer, as a sergeant, and even like now, where I'm like, man, where are you at? Like, am I not getting through? Like, this is what we need, and why was I wrong, or why was the group wrong when we did this? And sometimes it's not wrong, but it wasn't ideal.
Hmm.
But then with more time on, with more experience, and then seeing it from the other level and perspective, yeah, I didn't see the whole thing, right? And I do understand in that boss's role, with more time on, I'm like, yeah, I would make the same call. I would like now with both experiences, I would like to try to communicate it differently, but I know for a fact there's no way I'm not communicating things and having them not picked up the way I want, right? That's like, how do we really know? And we do our best, and which is why we talk about comms and EQ and all of that. So I love the positivity and I love the twist on that you present on leadership because again, and for some people it might be obvious because you've been listening in and you're like the solid leadership good stuff, but these are the things I had to figure out, right? I didn't just
Yeah.
know this is I'm literally learning as we go, and I get to sharpen my tools against yours, right? So which is
Yes.
being a leader so much more of being a coach. And so I didn't grow up with an infinity towards sports, but I've grown so intrigued by sports psychology, by the psychology and the team atmosphere and the leadership concepts applied to teams because it is, as you said, it's about highlighting strengths, it's about kind of curbing the weaknesses. But then how does everyone work together? How do you get the most out of everyone to be a contributor? Which is not just for performance of the team. Like that's a human need thing. Like everyone wants to be valuable and contributing, not just valued. That's the thing too. But like, no one wants to just show up and be there. They want to contribute. They want to be useful.
Yep.
And if they seem like they don't, it's because they're not well, and something's gone awry. Where we need to bring them back in, right, and show them that they can be a valued member of the team. So I like that. It's like the role of a coordinator, a facilitator, not a dictator, but like hey, how do we just get a little bit more, a little bit better from all of y'all so we can all do this thing that we all want to do a little bit better? I mean, like brass tacks, that's the thing.
Yeah. I'll just expound on that just a hair. I will tell you, midway through my career, I would have not have used the same language about not aligning. I probably would have been using a little bit of different
Mm,
language about who
yep.
I agreed with and didn't disagreed with. But
Yeah.
that's part of me understanding down the road after working in higher levels of management and having mentors of understanding. Man, there are just sometimes some things that you just can't explain in a quick second to the
Yep.
individuals that work with you, and that's part of going into the coaching and creating that group and creating that synergy. And one of the things I like to bring with the programs that I'm bringing is the synergy of bringing a group together, having a room full of individuals that have real life stories, having a group of individuals that all have resources available to share, creating a network, right? Networking, creating mentors, creating communication, and bringing all of that together and creating that synergy of a man, it's like a team, right? You've brought a
Yeah.
team together, as you said, a high performing sports team, and you have someone up at front that's just kind of molding that together. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's bringing individuals together for everyone to learn, to create that synergy, to get the most out of their time together, because everyone's time together is obviously valuable. And the other piece is include the family. And whether that's your spouse or whether it's your mentor or whatever it may be, that's part of what I want to bring to the table, because I think that's an integral piece. That's part of that 6-month check. You go through one of these classes, 6 months later, you're able to bring your spouse or someone. Guess what? 6 months later, they're going to say, hey, you designed this stuff in this class or whatever it may be. Where are you on that? Or what's your approach? Or where do you stand?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing about the training classes. That's actually where we're at next because we've covered so much ground. So, can you please also detail like the coaching you do, your other offerings, and where people can find you, Greg? Your website where they can find out more.
Yeah. So livingthegoodlifecoach.com. It's the name of my company. When I retired, I went through and I said, you know what? Everybody has everyone has the opportunity, or everyone should have the opportunity to live a good life. And when it comes to responders, so that's how I designed that. It started out with coaching, and real quickly, one of my mentors, best friends, actually was what recommended. He always gives me an outside opinion. I was struggling a little bit with retirement, finding my purpose, where I was supposed to be, not where I was supposed to be or where I wanted to be. It was a little bit of a disconnect as to where I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
And a VP in a company, and they have coaches in their company with their personnel and with their upper level management. He said, your personality and your traits and your values fit as being a coach. He goes, and I thought about it and did some research, and it certainly did align with a lot of my training within the Border Patrol, within the peer support, within Honor Guard, all of the stuff that I did within the Border Patrol. And I said, let's take this. So I do one-on-one coaching, personal and professional development, basically career transitions, personal transitions for first responders and their families. I do offer that. I have designed a couple of programs that I want to go out and get into the field with, and actually takes to the agencies and to the field offices. One of them is the Retire Ready. It's a pre-retirement wellness training. It includes families. So it's getting out there into the departments and bringing a program for a proactive approach to retirement, identity, purpose, understanding what the transitions are going to be for your family. Typically, finances is hammered into our heads, right? It's all about finance. I remember when I was getting ready for retirement, everybody wanted to talk about their 401ks and their TSPs and all of that stuff. But there weren't any programs out there that directly supported your personal life and how you were going to manage the identity piece. So I have that program. And then I also have a program that's called Built to Last, basically for FTOs. And that goes back into what we talked about at the beginning of the program. It's basically getting in front of your early cadets and getting them to understand who they are before they put their hand up, and how they can fit into their setting the best and be successful in their personal and their professional lives without falling into, getting into lengthy details, into the pitfalls that we typically fall into with first responders. Some of the things that unfortunately become more of reactionary pieces after we end up getting ourselves into, whether it's relationship troubles or substance abuse troubles or mental health or illness, or just not unpacking stuff when we should, that type of stuff. So it's a proactive approach to getting our trainees and our boots on the ground set with a proper foundation to be successful in their careers. And I also do a retirement coaching cohort, which is a cohort for like 6 to 8 individuals. It's more personalized. That's a virtual class, and that's offered a couple times a year. Yeah. Awesome. Super excited for what the next year is going to bring.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I love how you're hitting it from multiple levels. Like you're hitting it at the beginning of the career, you're hitting it at the end, like transitioning out, right? And so that's such a valuable thing. Just to circle back, I know there are a lot of folks that they're anxious and maybe they've been taking care of the things. It's not financial stress. It's just like, man, now what? Like, I don't want to be a stat, but also I feel pretty good. But it's also like, I just need to kind of like peel on this stuff and talk through with peers, and to have a group like that is fantastic. But also with your informed training, not just, I mean, it's great to, yuck it up with the buddies, but to get in a direction where here's where we're moving the conversation, here's where we're developing these thoughts and ideas. But to have tangible things for the coaching, the training, your cohort. So I appreciate that you're hitting it from multiple angles. People can obviously hear what was going to resonate for them in their career and their needs now. So thank you so much again, Greg, for joining us, for sharing about identity, all these challenges, how to lean into family and wellness and beyond. So again, livingthegoodlifecoach.com. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an honor to be on here, and I appreciate what you're doing for the wellness community and the leadership community as well. And I just look forward to jumping into and being part of the community and meeting a lot more individuals like yourself and doing the best I can to put it out there.
Absolutely. We need you. We need
Yeah.
all hands. So
Perfect.
glad to have you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.